I hope I'm the first VC to go onto a podcast with this, So just for the camera, I'll just throw it on quickly, So we have that shot of me sitting in a podcast wearing a headset. Look at that. What a moment in history. So obviously great day to talk about all these sorts of things and how to build companies for it, right? So that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I mean, you did a couple of calls with it. Does function in podcasts or things like that too?
Yeah, I mean, so I was on a call earlier with our intern, and so to demonstrate, I kind of just put it on, and also was like, well, it's what I'm doing a lot today is I'm just kind of like stress testing what it can do and not do, right, or like what works well, what doesn't work well. It's kind of what I'm more interested in. So just trying a bunch of stuff. So, I sat on a Zoom call with our intern with it. I just cooked some eggs with it on, and how everything works. And so just trying to get a real feel for, I think more so than anything, just like how integrated can this thing really be with what we already do, right? Because I think that's to some extent the pitch that Apple made from the beginning is, I don't know if they ever explicitly said this, but like, unlike, I guess when you put under conventional VR or the Quest, where it's a bit console-like feeling, the Vision Pro is supposed to, in every sense, kind of be more of really a natural extension of what we already do, both as humans, but also kind of just what we already do in computing. And of course, I'm trying to stress test how well they did in doing that. But so far, like pretty, it's quite impressive, I will say.
No one better to stress test than you.
Oh, I mean, I will say there are definitely plenty of people like, particularly, I mean, builders will know this stuff way better than me, right? But maybe on the VC side, yeah, it's me, maybe a couple others that, pretty deep in this stuff. So no, but I mean, really, I can't, at this stage, like, of course it's not perfect, right? It's like, it's not obviously not the end station, but if you look at it from the perspective of this is like iteration 1 of the Apple headset, and I will keep calling it a VR headset. It's very exciting, and I would be really surprised. And like, I went to the store to pick it up, and I was just talking to a lot of people there, like, all the employees at the store were like, just super amped up about it. They'd all tried it and all of that. And I'd be very surprised if most people that try this don't have a kind of really emotive reaction to it. I think it would be quite, you people, obviously, like people that have done the art before, it's really the best thing. But then especially like, there are going to be many people that are trying the Apple Vision Pro that have never had a VR headset before. I think that's going to be a pretty special experience, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, I don't know if you saw this Vanity Fair article that came out yesterday. So that's February 1st. So we're in February 2nd, obviously, for you to watch this back. But, where they have like quotes from like James Cameron and stuff. How he had this like religious experience in it and all that. I think it really underscores, a lot of, I think how the public is going to react to this. Now, I don't necessarily expect this for a number of reasons to become like a mass consumer device in like the next 12 months. Right? That's, I think I've been very vocal. I did a Substack piece on like, I think we need to really be realistic about expectations here, but I think it will serve to do the most important thing, which is to show people in masses that, this spatial thing, I will still call it VR, but VR for all intents and purposes is something that we want, and that's really like just the next step, right? And I think the early signs are that that's more or less the reaction people are having to it. And so as long as that's the case, I think it's a success. Then, obviously we'll slowly over time, get to being more kind of mass consumer scale and all of that normalized. I think just how it looks, but yeah, I mean, exciting times. I mean, I think I could speak for a lot of people in the industry in the AR VR space that this is a day a lot of us have been anticipating for a long time, and it's finally here. So it's obviously extremely exciting and in many ways validated. For real years of ridicule that other people more so than me, but a lot of us that kind of have been vocal supporters of VR for a long time. It's validation that maybe we weren't so nuts after all. Like we moved on to something. So let's see. I mean, I'm obviously super amped up today. So But let's see how I feel about the 30 days. But today, like, pretty impressed.
Is this a? Do you think? I mean, you have used it for a couple of hours. Is this the iPhone moment for Apple, or will Apple try to reach mass adaptation with this?
I mean, I don't, all the indications are no, right? Like I think they're definitely like, if I'm trying to like come down back to earth now, talk about this thing, I think there are definitely a few realities that need to be addressed. I don't want to necessarily get into a lot of the technical details, right? Because, I think even though it's like as good as like the pass through is on it, and how magical a lot of the experiences are, there are some like limitations, right? Like in spatial video, the field of vision is not exactly, it's not even as good as on a Quest, right? You kind of feel that in some ways, right? So it's not totally there yet. But even on the economic side of it, right? There are only rumors as to how many of these they're actually going to produce, at least in 24, right? And so, I mean, all the rumors are, if you believe them to be true, to be anywhere from 500,000 to a million. Now, again, I don't know how much flexibility Apple has on supply chain, that if these things just fly off the shelf and everybody wants one, if they can really like kind of up that number. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they actually ship a million of these. That's a really small amount of headsets, right? And it's not really going to put dent into the mass consumer market, even in the VR market, right? I mean, Meta sold more Quest 3s since they released it late last year than supposedly Apple's even going to produce with the Vision Pro this year, assuming that the number of million units is accurate. And that obviously doesn't even account for all the other Quest headsets that are already kind of in the ecosystem. So, in many ways, it's effectively, I think it's maybe crude to call it like a high-end dev kit, but it's definitely not going to be a mass consumer device. And again, I think that goes back to what I said earlier about the thing that it really needs to do to be a success, especially putting that supply constraint into consideration, is that it's just something that people look at and are like, holy crap, I want that. Maybe I can't afford it. And by the way, I think one of the downstream effects of that is going to be that it's going to sell a lot more Quest 3s, because there are going to be a lot of people that get exposed to this idea for the first time for Apple. Because when I was at the store now, just picking it up, again, like I was talking to a lot of the customers and a lot of the employees there, and a lot of them, I said stuff like, oh, I worked on the Quest and all this sorts of things. They're like, what's the Quest? And then I would kind of take it from a different angle and be like, yeah, I worked on like Facebook, Meta's VR stuff. And that kind of rang a bell. But they're like, oh, what is their headset called again? Right. But so basically, like moral of the story being that a lot of people that were lining up in the store were effectively tech normies, right? They weren't like VR nerds, which I thought was, and again, that's one data point, right? So maybe that doesn't generalize, but just from my experience, that's what I saw. But, with more people, now you can walk, this is the first time you can walk into a store and see a VR headset, actually have exposure to it, right? Book a demo and all of that. Before it was, I have a friend that has a Quest, I want to try it at his place, right? You can't really go anywhere and try it, at least not with a good experience. And Apple, like, completely, I think, nailed that, right? Like, they have the distribution, and then they make these very curated demos. They like really sell you on it. So people are gonna have that experience, and then like some of them might go back because it's prohibitively expensive. Like, they're not going to be a lot of people that want to spend $3,500 on a headset. Very expensive. They might look at, do some reading on it and be like, oh, I can buy effectively, and I'm not going to say it's the same thing necessarily for a number of reasons, but an approximate experience for a fraction of the price. It Quest 3 is $500, right? And just buy those. And so, like, one of the things that I fully expect to happen is, not only is this going to be good for Apple, but I think it's going to be good for Meta. And not just even from the sales. I mean, you could even talk, I think, about how Meta thinks about developing its UI and all these sorts of things, which I think, the Quest has been pretty poor to date. And Apple, on the flip side, those are like their strengths, right? Like great UI, UX. Meta's great at scaling, right? So they can look at a lot of what Apple's doing in the headset and put it in there to scale the crap out of it. So I think this is just a really kind of like a watershed moment in the ecosystem, but I definitely don't expect, every second, like the way everybody has an iPhone in the US for all intents and purposes, for every second person to have a Vision Pro. Like, I don't think that's going to happen soon. I do think it will be a slow burner, but I think this is that moment where the general public starts to understand like the power of the medium, and I think that in of itself is a huge win, because I think up to date it's been very nebulous. Right? We've had, and just to sort of close that point, we've gone from the idea of VR being effectively the mishaps and gaffes that Meta has had with marketing this quote unquote metaverse, which is a low poly kind of weird parallel universe that nobody really understands why it should exist. Nobody asked for, for people's understanding of VR to be that, to now sort of transition to the way that Apple is framing it. And I don't think they're going to lose the VR label as much as they might try to call it spatial computing. I don't really see that happening necessarily. At least not in the short term, but it changes the perspective, right? And I think that in of itself will just really be extremely advantageous. I mean, really, everybody in the industry, I think, is going to have tailwind. Apple effectively pitched is, we're taking what you already do. This ties into this vertical integration. We're taking what you already do and know how to do, and just kind of putting it in a new modality. That's like really the pitch that they. So it's like we're taking one step, right? And I think one of the issues that Meta had with marketing this, right, was going to this like fully VR thing, is that someone like me understood what they're trying to do, right? People like, VR founders and stuff understand what they're trying to pitch. The problem is it's not resonant with a general public, right? Because you're basically asking them to take 5 steps, in their head is take 5 proverbial steps forward, right, at one time. And so Apple, I think the sort of like slow onset of, we're not really leaning totally into the fully immersive, right? A lot of it's about pass through and doing things that we know how to do and all that sorts of stuff. You still have a lot of like the modus operandi of the headset is still be connected to your actual physical environment, which granted the Quest 3, the Quest Pro to some extent also do, but there is another difference with it's integrated with all of my already computing stack. Right? It's not as true for the Quest. It makes it a lot more approachable. And so I think, and then that tied with the Apple factor that we talked about, all these sorts of things, I think it's something people get excited about. I mean, I put the story of it on my personal Instagram, where I usually never post anything, but I was just curious to put it there to see like, how do all these like college friends and stuff that I have react to this thing? And I have never I put up like 2 hours ago or so, and I have all these people, I mean, even partially that I haven't talked to in years, respond to it and be like, oh my God, that's so cool, right? How is it? Like asking all these questions about it, which never would have happened about the Quest, right? Everybody knows that we do VR for a long time. Nobody ever gave a crap about the Quest of Apple, right? They're interested. And so, but I think feature-wise, those are like the two big things, at least at this point, that I can say, is the vertical integration. And it's just, it's very extensive of your existing computing, so it doesn't really feel disjointed. There are downsides to that, of course, too, but you were talking kind of from like a general public perspective. That's probably what has made it successful.
Do you, yeah. I mean, would any other company have been able? Would any other company really be able to replicate this?
No, Apple is Apple. There's no other player in the market. So that's pretty much it. I think Apple had to do this. I think, there's been murmurs for a long time that Apple was going to do this. So there's just a lot of anticipation, particularly in the industry, about when it was finally going to come, with the days come. I mean, it's kind of so surreal to me to perceive all the reviews and everything that are coming in on this thing, right? Like, it's really, crazy. I mean, I think the reaction so far has been pretty good. Like, let's see, like more consumers are obviously getting theirs this week. Sorry, today. So we'll see in a week what people are saying about it. But obviously the early signals have been really, really promising, and people being really blown away by it. And, but I think Apple's the only company that could have had this level of impacts, right, from entering the space. Like Google Samsung like announced their headset as well around the same time that Apple announced theirs last year. Nobody cared, right? It was all about Apple, so that's really, I think, what the reality is.